Welcome to the Corner Office, where we bring you the latest news from the world of commercial real estate, the greatest voices in the industry, and the corporate chats you've been missing. Let's get to it.
Darryl, welcome to our little podcast here. It's actually been a long time since I've wanted to have you in here, and I was thinking about how to introduce you. You know, you've had a massive career in the property industry. It's gone on 30 years. I mentioned earlier how you look like you kind of set in stone. You don't tend to age, you know. And I was thinking, you know, Darryl always talks about these shopping centers and how we turn them around, and it's almost as though you can see into the future. And then I realized, does that have anything to do with the name of your thing, Cedar? Cedar. So I would have said that you would have been burned at the stake if we were in the 1800s, you know. But I really want to get into chatting about shopping center strategy here, just a bit back about your own career and all the rest of it. But my burning question is, how do you start to turn a shopping center around? Some of these things look so bad, they just cannot attract anyone to them. And suddenly it gets turned around. What do you start off with?
You know, it's first of all, it's nice to be here. And when we agreed to meet the first time, it was to have a few drinks in the bar with your guys.
Yeah.
So this is a very different format, and I'm going to take you up on that conversation to talk to your team. But looking at assets, look, turning around properties is a very niched and specialist skill. And I think it comes from either having grown up in the industry and seeing what works, making a few mistakes, understanding what you learned from, you know, those kind of experiences. And what I would typically look at with malls that look like dogs to certain people, but it's like that's where you marry your experience, your intuition, and maybe that it's just that commercial nous that you go, you know, so this thing doesn't seem that it should be in this kind of state.
Yeah. I suppose you start off and you say it's in a good area, right?
Location, I mean, if the location's still good,
Yeah.
it's got a fighting chance. You ask yourself the question of what market did it subscribe to in its time? What's changed?
I suppose if you look at, if we go back, the Berea and these kind of areas, you know, they used to be great areas. People used to live, like a lot of people used to live there.
Yeah.
It catered to a certain type of market.
Yeah.
Now it's a very different type of market.
But it doesn't mean it's bad.
Doesn't mean it's bad. It's just a different market.
So
yeah.
and see, like, I think there's two skills people need. And you're not going to find a person that plays in both. It's a bit like the fashion industry. People like Prada will launch a pair of jeans at 20 grand. And then you can find players who can make the same look for 800 rand.
Yeah.
You know, or you find something that, you know, maybe it's a Levi that looks at 800. You go, shit, that looks pretty cool. How do we push that? You know, because I think the fashion industry does. They go and look at what's working on the street, and then they elevate it to the luxury market. It's the same thing with malls. So you look, a shift in Berea, did the person have the foresight to see that life was changing, and did they adapt accordingly? And did they have the skill to take a mall that potentially was looking at a mid to high LSM and then drop it? And what kind of users would be there? Now, here's the cool thing in SA, is that most of your big chains have an offering for both markets.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, okay, 20 years ago, maybe there wasn't this kind of top-of-the-end ShopRite market, but it was ShopRite or Checkers. What was the next offering? Could you go to a Boxer? Could you drop to a Kit Kat? Could you drop to a Chess and Yama? You know, you got to, and can a person think like that? Then you go to like kind of an urban node like Hyde Park or whatever, and you look at, okay, what's shifted here? Or why has a market lost traction in this area?
So a lot of these big, not a lot of, but a significant amount of these centers were built in the 90s. Yeah. Some of them even in the 80s. What is fundamental? If you were looking at a new development in the 90s in retail, right? How would you start then compared to how would you start now? Because, from my perspective, I can't remember in the early 2000s coffee being such a big deal. You know, I don't, it wasn't a culture in South Africa.
In 95 was my first, I was in contracting building before. In 95, I joined Investec. We were doing rural developments, 1,500 square meters, 2,500 square meters. But you know, what it gave you is a sense of, we were going to remote areas. You had to see where the commuters were arriving, where they were getting off, what the kind of activity was around the sites that you were looking at. And then coming with pinpoint accuracy, say that is the site that works and nothing else will work in this area. And I'll give you an amazing example. We did a development in Mafikeng. And the site looked like an absolute cracker on a corner site at the station, a fortune of commuters coming back and forth in that area. But the taxis that stopped at our site, the door faced the center, the Ellerine Center, which was across the road. So a guy gets out of the taxi, steps off, and he walks straight into Ellerine's, and he doesn't come to our site. That's a learning.
Such a small little
thing,
detail.
you know? Yeah. And then, you know, when you talk about who were the players in the 90s, Sales House, Jet, Edgar's, those three brands which hardly make an
Sales
impact
House.
in a mall. They don't make an impact. But we would run around the country looking for Sales House, Jet, and Edgar's. The other thing about it was you would choose a Pick and Pay in those days over a Checkers any day. So, you know, the national retailers would direct where the developments would take place, and that would spawn new areas and new developments. And our kind of focus was Edgar's was the golden child, and we would follow them. And if you had a choice of a supermarket, it was definitely going to be a Pick and Pay. Now think how life's changed in that market.
Edgar's. You'd start with Edgar's.
Edgar's
Wow.
was the catalyst. I spent an inordinate amount of time looking for sites in Kwakwa and Harry Smith for Sales House and Edgar's. I spent Harry Smith. It's a town that if you held your breath at 100 k's an hour, you drive right through it. Okay, and we were going there looking for a site, and that's what was spawning. And in those days when we were doing that, the McCormacks were still operating in Tweefontein and rural areas there, so they were spawning stuff. In terms of the metropolitan nodes, it was the big institutions like Liberty which was doing Sandton. But here's the thing: Sandton started off at 25,000 squares, I think. It's evolved to 160 or 180,000, whatever the size is today. You know, that is clever development where they would allow a bit of tension to build and then expand. And there was always, Sandton for me is like this golden mall because it's got unbelievable access, unbelievable offering. It's kind of just been it's dominated its space for so long.
And you can't find another portion of land to develop something like that again. Yeah.
You know, that's the truth with regional malls. Well, super regional malls by nature have to anticipate where the market's going to be, and commercial convenience you can plonk right in an area where it's going to be. You know, that's different, but that's spawning new stuff. So I mean, you know, it was a simple model. Who's your food anchor? Who's your fashion anchor? And then fill the space in between. Today it's kind of who your two food anchors, because if you've got two food, you've got a strong mall. One food, what often happens if you've got one supermarket anchor, you effectively create a market for a second operator to come in the area and compete with you. So now you compete with all the line shops. So your mom and pops, hairdressers, the cell phones.
So when you say two food, you're talking like ShopRite and Woolworths.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Great combination today. That's a happy combination. Both work. I mean, it's interesting how they both work because actually what happened is ShopRite's lifted their game. It's like almost like, what's the real difference here? You know, it's not an easy. It's hard to pick it up. You know, I mean, I look at the food particularly, but the supermarket, the fruit and veg.
Yeah,
like that's my go-to place in Woolies, but it's actually a go-to place in Checkers now.
In your mind, the sentiment changed? Now we saw some brilliant stuff at the SA REIT conference. They were actually tracking, bank payments, card payments, and linking it to cell phone accounts. And they were looking at the catchment area for a ShopRite and the catchment area for a Pick and Pay. How many Pick and Pay customers shopped at ShopRite and vice versa, and they note this trend over like a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
And what they see is that something like 40% of Pick and Pay customers also shopped at ShopRite, but only 20% of ShopRite customers shopped at Pick and Pay. Okay. Then what they see is this catchment area of ShopRite was far bigger and grew, and the catchment area of Pick and Pay shrunk. And this is over the last sort of 7-year type of period. But I can remember when Pick and Pay, it was the other way around. Pick and Pay was just shooting the lights out and ShopRite was behind. What's changed in people's mind? Is it literally the layout of the store, or have they just been really aggressive in terms of acquisition of sites?
You know, I mean, so that goes more into the realm of the retailing itself than property. Yeah. But whatever,
and also the leadership, right? The leadership in the business.
Checkers is just getting it right every time.
Yeah.
Every time. They are aggressive. They basically owning this market. They are opening up. Wherever they open, they do well. And I can tell you they know their stats so well that they will tell you in the same mall on an opening date, if they did 20 bars, they'll know what Pick and Pay did relative to them, and it will be lower, significantly lower. That's how good they are. Now, I'll tell you my history in development with these guys. We did a development in Davyton about 8-9 years ago. ShopRite, Pick and Pay. the ShopRite guys were putting us under pressure to open early. They were not interested in having a mayoral procession, cutting ribbon. They wanted to open at 7 in the morning and trade. Their trolleys were outside, their foods were, everything was stocked, shelves, ready to go. Their staff dressed ready, it was like they were lining up for the World Cup final. Yeah. And Pick n Pay were happy to wait an extra day for the mayor to come, and they were still stocking shelves, and their trolleys went outside. There's a difference in the culture and the operating model of that business. Is just it's a winner. It's out there to win, and that's the amazing thing, is because that's exactly where Pick n Pay was. You know, when I started out in this game, Pick n Pay was the Walmart of South Africa. It was the Raymond Ackerman. What he said was like flipping. It was gospel.
Yeah.
And I read the book on Sam Walton at the time, Swimming Upstream of something. But everything that Sam Walton did is what Raymond Ackerman.
But he wrote that book, Four Legs of a Table. I think.
You know, so like they were a value play, but Walmart's managed to sustain it. They've got better. Checkers was, I don't know where the switch came, but you know what happens with the switches? It happens, and then you go, oh my head, I wasn't watching that. You know.
Yeah, they started then. You think it happened now?
Yeah,
it started then.
It started back then. And then just going back to saying, like, in the turnaround opportunities, it's about location if your location's shifted, you've got a problem. Then I think you need to look for a repurpose, you know. And I think you'll find lots of things like that. But, you know, I'm a big fan. Access is crucial. There are many things about shopping that you can't put your finger on, the pulse, but you know why you don't know why you enjoy going to a certain mall, but you just do.
So give us your 5. These are the things. Okay, these are what I need.
Location. Yeah. The relevance in the market. If it didn't exist, would it make a difference in anyone's lives? Yeah. And that's a huge question to ask, because that's an honest question. You go, shit, okay, like now I've got, like, if we weren't here, no one would care.
Yeah.
And I'm going like, you no longer have a strategic positioning in the world. So did we have a purpose? Can we recover that purpose? Has our market changed? Can we adapt to the new market? Location, is it still relevant? Now, then structural issues. How many malls I've seen get completely stuffed up because of it was a convenience mall that just flat out worked, and some oak thought that it would be a good idea to add another level, or to add 4 parking decks and hide the mall and create from a 20,000 strip mall to a 40,000 ghost town. And now you have a problem. And we are littered with those kind of malls, littered with them. And I would just say, like, I was a judge at one of the shopping centre council for the awards. A 2-story convenience mall is a kiss of death. The upstairs is not worth 30 Rand net. So if you've got a user for 30 Rand, but if you're coming with a retailer for upstairs, he's going to die, and you're not going to fill that space. And you better, budget.
Then you look at like there's few examples of work, like Riverside Shopping Centre. That actually works because you've got the hairdresser upstairs, you've got the Riverside's interest. I think first it's a very small.
It's
upstairs.
very small. Yeah. It's got a very strong, Woolies thing. It does have a market. I mean, here's the thing: where does that Bryanston Park Mall shopper go? It's either to the regional of Sandton, the super regional of Sandton. You could go to Benmore. Benmore. In some respects, Benmore's kind of holding its own. And I think potentially it's because of its location, not because of its design. And I think it's a bit like Riverside too. But I'm a big fan.
Benmore's going to come under pressure with this LXX, with the Caballeros group.
I'm not sure.
Really? I love it. Have you seen the design?
So I'll tell you one thing. It's a feather in our cap. They spent a lot of time at the neighborhood in Linksfield.
Yes.
Because that is like, we just got that.
A lot of echoes of that design.
We got it spot on.
Yeah.
It's 10,000 squares of the best retail in the world.
And where else do you shop?
And where else do you shop? And that thing has had a massive impact on a catchment area to Eastgate, Bedford. It's like an amazing thing. It attracts its customer base from Bedfordview. Do you know how far Oak's got to schlep to go get a coffee if he wants? He's got to cross the highway. He's got to go wind him way down Galuli's. He's got a real schlep to come to, and yet he chooses to go there.
But it's a great environment.
But it's flipping great. Yeah. And now it'll be interesting. I want to see the finished product. I never poo-poo somebody's thing, because I'm going, here's the thing. They saw something, and what lessons would we learn from that? What the real challenge for me about that mall is, I want to see how smoothly the access works, because it's not on-grade parking.
It's not.
But
you kind of come in and you go down, but they're also doing a loop road between the two buildings.
But the ease of that is where malls get screwed up. the ease of the loop must be very easy.
Very easy.
The ease of dropping into that basement must feel like I'm not going into a basement, because look at what we learned from Athol Square. A basement at Athol Square.
Oh, yes.
It's been knocked down, demolished
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
but
yeah.
somehow nobody wanted to drive to the basement. So
But then
your
you got
spa-
Morningside Shopping Centre, which has a lot of on-grade. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And then there's also the...
I don't think a Morningside or a Riverside would have worked if it weren't for the operators behind those developments.
Yes.
So I just think I'm a big fan of Flanagan and Gerard, a big fan of Moolman. They get it. It's not an easy asset. A two-level convenience mall is not an easy asset to navigate. They've managed to hold Morningside tightly, and it hasn't had much attrition on the downstairs, but the downstairs is not the upstairs, eh?
Yeah.
Now let's, just transport yourself to Nickel Way.
Yeah.
Nickel Way. It was almost a mirror image of
Same, but bigger.
same, but bigger. And I'm worried about the size of it under the current ownership, because it's now institutional.
Who's managing it?
So it's
Is it Grapnel managing it?
I don't know who's managing, but it's employee. It was funded by the employees' pension fund.
Yeah, Eskom pension fund.
I think, but EPP, I can't remember, but it bought aggressively at close to 7%. It's got a downstairs that needs a lot of attention, and you haven't got the skills in the team to manage an asset of that. And that asset was a star. And I remember even at Investec at the time when I was there, the question was around, could it work without an Edgar's? How's that?
Really,
Could it work without an Edgar's? That's how powerful Edgar's was when that thing was spawned. And
It's not a long time
and the
ago.
developers felt they didn't need an Edgar's. And I mean, how was that for Foresight? Because you had Four Ways, which was still at a right size. It hadn't been taken to the point of like no return. My view on Nickel Way is you got to watch it carefully, because it has an impact on all the surrounding stuff. But here's the thing: when I was at Investec Property Fund, we turned around Design Quarter. I'm not sure Design Quarter was going to be that good if Four Ways was that good.
Yes.
Okay,
So
and I
you're
think
saying,
what happened was the weakness of Four Ways, the fact that a lot of consumers are now schlepping to Mall of Africa. Let's
It's
look at
actually
DQ.
catalysed a lot of
But
other things, yeah.
DQ defies a lot of what I've said. The access it is easy access, but it's not on grade, straight off William Nicol onto the parking deck and shop.
Yes.
You go around through a boom, tuck the back. You got to go up. You're going to park in a basement, but we've made it very easy to access the basements. I say
At least
we,
you
I'm not-
drive
I'm not part
in
of the
an
we.
on-grade park and then you
But
go
you-
up. Yeah.
and the circulation, which I want to see if Cavaleros gets it right in Sandhurst, is you come in, you're willing to take a chance and look for that parking on grade. If you don't find it, you don't feel like, oh my hat, now I've got to go and navigate a spiral, into the deep dark dungeon basement. So, and I also think once people come to grips with how a mall works, they find their happy access and happy parking spaces, and that's why you have to also be careful. It's easy to be critical when a thing's failing. When I went to spend time at Four Ways Mall, for example, just to understand, like, how would you fix this thing? I've never shopped there, and as a regional shopping,
This is actually a very topical
you don't know where you're
subject,
coming.
right?
I get stuck.
You
I
got
don't know where I
Flanagan and
parked.
Gerard just taken over the management of Four Ways Mall. I mean, I went there from a consumer perspective and a property professional perspective. They've kind of caged the thing in parking decks, which makes it seem very unapproachable.
Yeah.
They've put these huge flyovers over, but they're not nice and easy to drive ones. They dip and they bump, and you kind of up and down, and it feels a bit of a four-way, a bit of an off-road track to get around on your big sort of fly loop road. What do you actually do there? How do you start?
It's like eating the elephant one bite at a time. That's the truth. So, it's amazing what you say about the flyovers, because somebody thought carefully about that. And
spend real money.
On paper, it must have made a lot of sense to bring people into the mall as easily as possible. But you do feel like you're on a black diamond slope in Colorado. And that is a natural barrier to a customer. Now, most regional malls are covered with parking. Sandton's enclosed by parking.
True.
But Sandton you access from all four roads. And you slide off Alice,
anywhere you
West,
want to go,
Great. You just slide off, you know what I mean? Like for me, Sandton, it occupies a city block. You access it from four sides. And in fact, there's often two entrances. There's two entrances on the one that divides the...
Alice or whatever
Alice.
it is.
So you got two entrances on one road. You got very easy when you're coming up Sandton Drive. It's a very easy access. I mean, although it's surrounded by parking, it works. And again, it's because it's got scale. Now, Four Ways has got one access point, and it's flipping a nightmare to get in there. And I think the play in Four Ways is Cedar, not Four Ways, because it's got access, on grade, high visibility, and it basically intercepts every oak who lives from Stain City.
You have to go past.
You have to go past Cedar Square, and you don't have to go into Mall of Africa. I mean,
Cedar.
Cedar.
Yeah,
Not Cedar.
Four Ways Mall.
Sorry,
yeah.
And now you get into and now you go into the mall. And as a new shopper, because I've grown up with Sandton from 25 to 60 to 80, whatever it was, but I parked there and I couldn't remember where I parked. But if you live in the area,
that's Melrose Arch. That's Melrose Arch.
If you're, I mean,
I don't know what it is about Melrose Arch, but when you get in there, you don't know where you park.
Because it's a feeling that you've got that you go, I don't like coming here. And, if you want to fix up Melrose Arch, first of all the on-grade parking should be for customers and not reserved for the police, for drop-offs, for loading bays.
And Ferraris.
For Ferraris. And what's his name? And Aristi from, I don't want to criticize him. But, he's blocked off a road. And I'm going if you're not allowing your customers to shop on grade, they're going to go elsewhere. And they, it's been the bane of my life, Melrose Arch, because I go to the gym there and I've got a lot of meetings there and I go to the bike shop there. But they've got bollards blocking you parking. Yeah. They've got security guards that clamp your cars. And I
just feel like people could do a much better job of telling you how to get out of these places. Gautrain's another one. God, I despair when I go to these places.
So the shoppers need to be treated like, there's one, I don't want to mention them all because I try to consult to them, but they're given VIP parking. So people can pay extra money for VIP parking. They're guaranteed to have a parking spot at the entrance to the mall. How disgraceful is that? If I knew that was VIP and I'm a shopper, I'd probably never go back to that mall again. I found out that this was VIP. I actually didn't know why there were all these fancy cars parked outside the entrance. But, make it easy for people to access. Make it easy for
everyone,
on grade it's a huge thing. Sometimes there are areas where, you get away with stuff because it just... But you've designed it in such a way that it just feels flippin' appealing. Yeah. Now, I'll tell you what I'm going to be interested in. You mentioned the Cavaleros one, but I'm going... Fortress has fixed up Thrupp Centre.
Yes.
They've changed the name. I can't remember the name. I think it's 254 or something. It's got a name of the address.
Still quite a lot of work going on there, but yeah.
So the on-grade parking from Oxford is going to be a huge thing. Is Thrupp strong enough to attract a shopper downstairs? And has Thrupp's got a relevance in the market? Because you're going to have a Checkers up the road at...
I was actually there the other day, funny you mention it, and they have changed that parking. So you go all the way to the end, you can kind of reverse and go back down. It makes it much easier to shop there.
So, and
what a powerful node.
And
because Hyde Park...
I love
Hyde Park's turned into a bit of it's like an art gallery.
I'm so glad you said that, because I want to fix up Hyde Park.
I mean, I love Hyde. It's great, but it's just...
If Mornay's listening, he needs to understand. Hyde Park was always our example of... We said in the retail space, you need to be niched or dominant. Now, Sandton was an example of dominant, and Hyde Park was an example of niched.
Yeah.
And I never thought that it would lose market share in the niche market. You've got the highest LSM in the country. It's highly aspirational, but you've got the wrong tenant mix there currently, and you've got pockets of... areas that are like a morgue, and because art galleries do not attract shoppers, and they a bit like going to a library where everybody whispers, and there's no vibe about having an art gallery in your mall.
Yes.
And if you're going to have art galleries in the mall, put it in an area where nobody shops.
Yeah.
So
similar to Sandton has that one corner.
So drop 20 years ago, if a person had a pet shop in a mall, it was like a kiss of death. Now the pet food market's become the new kind of Dis-Chem. It's Dis-Chem for pets,
and ShopRite bought the...
Yeah, so everyone's in it. ShopRite's in it, Woolies in it, the guys from even Westpac are in it. It's a great business. It doesn't have the pong of a pet shop where you had dogs and cats and fish and all that crap going on in the mall, And then, so suddenly that market came at us, and it was always in the UK, interesting, but never here.
I forget they used to actually have the animals.
And we had pet shops, and remember that. So there's a few things that I found were just like offensive things to put in a mall, or there were signs that the mall was in trouble, and a pet shop was one of them.
Yes.
And I think art galleries are the next.
Debt collector.
Yeah, or, like a tattooist. Like, although it's very current, I think there's a place to put a tattoo parlor.
Yes.
And it's not in a mall where I've got my kids there having a haircut and some oak's having his tongue pulled out of his mouth with they're shoving that. Like, I mean, like, I've got my own stuff that I'm happy with in a mall and the stuff that I'm unhappy with in a mall. And I don't like tattoo parlors.
Yes.
Not saying I'm opposed to them. I used to have one in my old day. A tattoo, not a parlor.
Yeah.
But I don't like them. I'm not mad about the vape shops. I think their presentation's slick, but I don't feel like having a guy in my store, in my mall, blowing smoke rings into the mall or videos of people. It's just like...
They do them far better in Europe, but you've got this real sort of cafe culture, and they're sort of open to the street, and you go into almost like a lounge where you go into the vape bar, and it's just a lot better set up. I find the ones that are here are like arcades. And
but their turnover is through the roof, eh? I'll tell you that. The turnover of these places. So it's a relevant player, but it's how you package them. So I think I've seen like this. There are some very slick ones, but I want them in the store then, not in the entrance of my mall on those kiosks where I've got some dude there blowing O-rings. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, or videos of people just buffeting out smoke out their car. It's just not my... You want to create the experience. But here, again, let me talk against myself. Let's go back to Berea. You've got a mall in Berea. The LSM's changed. What do these people smoke, eat, and wear? And you've got to subscribe to that market. And if it's vape and tattoo and whatever, then you put them in.
That's what you put in.
Then you put them in. But if you have a certain standard, it's like you carry a brand when you own a mall or you refurb a mall. Like, what does it look? What is my brand when I come to that mall? And everyone must subscribe to the rules of my mall. So your signage,
So you're not competing against. It's not.
I'm not creating a Jewel Street second-hand car dealership as my mall. It's going to look like a BMW still or a Mini Cooper, even though it's in Jewel Street. Yeah. But it must carry a brand. It must be aspirational. You still want to treat your shoppers. They still want to feel like they're getting value. The place looks good. It feels comfortable, well lit. There's so many nuances in the game as well, like with trolleys. When you push a trolley, does it clackety-clack on the tiles or not? That's an irritant. Yes. How do I push my trolley from the shop to the mall? Do I have to go? Am I forcing the guy to a ramp, or can he access, or he or she access from any point in the mall to the...
Yes. Is it all flat and on grade, or do you have pavements?
Go to the neighborhood. You've got unbelievable access to the road. There are planter boxes for greenery and things like that. But you want to just... Don't let your aesthetics and your ego get in the way of just the practical...
We spoke earlier about parking. And I mean, in Johannesburg specifically, for whatever reason, people like to have their restaurant looking at their cars. Okay, in Cape Town, it's kind of they like to have the restaurant looking at the mountain, or something like this. And talking about having shopping centres which are sunk below the road and shopping centres which are on grade, and you kind of drive in and whatever. What do you think that is? I mean, it's just a human psychology, right?
I'm trying to understand a few things here, because north-facing restaurants, coffee shops in Joburg will trade better than a south-facing restaurant in the same mall. If you've got a U-shaped piazza, have a look at it. The ones facing north trade better than the ones facing south. There's 100 examples that I'll give you. I even remember in the early days when they opened Sandton Square, there was the side that faced north that always heaved, and the side that was opposite, where you had the grill. The grill house actually just traded well because it was the grill house, and you had a hotel above it, and you had foreign people that were willing to. They'd never eaten meat like this in their lives, right? But nothing else worked on that side of the mall. And yet you go into a high street London, where a guy's sitting in the freezing cold with a blanket on his legs, facing. He doesn't care whether he's facing northeast, southwest.
Doesn't matter,
he's facing. That's his go-to place. I looked at the Furs when we turned the Furs round. Doppio and Fishmongo, north-facing, the other side was dead. Now we've balanced it with La Parada and Chunky Chow.
But I suppose our elements are so harsh, if you're going to sit in the wrong side,
but here's the thing. Sun smashes you in summer, and yet it will trade better than the south. I mean, south-facing.
Yeah.
In winter, the sun is remarkable, so the north-facing does well. But then you tuck into the Rosebank kind of towards the zone, where you've got east and west facing restaurants where Tasha's is, and that. Now that's the coldest strip in the world, and yet Tasha's trades well.
Yes.
And then you look opposite where you got Fugazi and Pride Mary, and that's north facing, trades well.
Yeah.
The south facing doesn't
trade well.
You know, and yet you go to London or anywhere like where the weather's like in Amsterdam, you'll sit outside with a heater next to you and it works.
Doesn't matter.
So I don't know the solution to that, but I always try and orientate the right way. There's unbelievable examples in SA, like of what you say about facing the cars. And that's what we try to create at Design Court as well, which we did successfully, is allowing the cars to kind of circulate. It's not like we want to look at the cars, but I think people want to see where there's an energy. And
yes.
so, but here's the thing, you know, like piazzas work for that reason, but then you go to like Dunkeld, Fornos Dunkeld. Like it's probably a 3 out of 10 as a retail offering goes. But Fornos pumps. And people
but that's an example of location.
Yeah, okay, but I mean, people sit there. You literally, your bumper of your car is against your thigh if you're sitting outside.
Yeah.
But you're still happy to sit there because there's an.
I reversed in there one day, and I was on my phone. I was talking, and I reversed it, and I came and knock on the window. I said, "Do you mind turning your car off?"
Your fumes are eating into my croissant.
Yeah.
So, but people like to. I think.
And there's that fish shop next door to it.
But you want energy. You know,
blows the fish
maybe
across
that's
the
really you got to
croissants,
look at is. What is the energy level like of where I'm facing? Is it whether it's north, south, east, west? No problem. What's the energy? Are people coming past? Is there a buzz? Because people want, like, that's what people are looking for today. You know, indoor mall dining is like, it's so 70s now, you know. And yet, let's look at Hyde Park again. People like the indoor dining at Hyde Park. So, but it says a lot about the age, the wealth, and potentially maybe... I've yet, you know, if I was going to Hyde Park on a Sunday, would I go in my slip-slops and shorts and a T-shirt? Probably not.
Yeah.
I might actually go home, shower and dress and go to Hyde Park. It says a lot about the kind of market that it attracts and appeals to. And so, you know, but it doesn't need an art gallery.
Yeah.
And I hope that they get this podcast because it's predominantly...
We'll make sure they do.
It's predominantly anchored by art galleries now, and that's a problem. And, you asked also where you fix up.
Yes.
Small chunks. I'm not a solution for 180,000 squares, or 200. I don't know how big that thing is, but I actually saw a great article. It cannot be described as the biggest mall in Africa because you've got probably the biggest vacancy in Africa. And what you have probably the size of a regional mall vacant in that mall. Yeah. But you've got to start with pockets.
Just for everyone, let's run through what super regional, what, like,
I don't even know anymore. You know, when I started in the game, I think 25,000 squares was regional. Now that would be like community strip mall. But I haven't looked at the SAPOA guidelines today. But I would say, you know, if it kind of sits at the 80 plus, it's most likely a super regional. But there's a big difference between 80, 100, and 160, which is what Mall of Africa is.
Yes.
You know, convenience today. You know, the neighborhood's 10,000, but I would classify our 21,000 in Davyton we did some years ago as also convenience. But it's enclosed. Does that make it not convenience? I think it is. You know, I'm not so worried about the kind of profiling them as opposed to just like saying, my question is, how relevant is this thing? And who did this and why? And who supported it and why? Like, you know, somebody approved finance here. Yeah. And on what basis? And who's missing?
But often finance gets approved by backing the jockey, right? So if you've got a significant player coming into the market, the banks are likely to follow them. I mean, how much information? Let's talk about Investec. Okay, yeah. You've had a long career at Investec, right? How do the banks actually look at? I mean, I know you're in the property fund side.
Jockeys count, but tenant mix counts. And in the old days, we were very prescriptive. Certainly, I knew we couldn't get a deal approved in the bank unless we were 70% pre-let to nationals. Okay, now that's often not a difficult thing to accomplish when you've got 8 nationals to speak to about a mall because they represent so many brands. The biggest lesson that I think the banks learned, certainly in the crisis, was that it doesn't take long to go from a property guy to go from a high net worth to a low net worth in one mistake. And that's where, because you think about it, you know, a small mall, 10,000 square meter mall is going to be 250 bars to build. If you get it wrong, your 250 is worth 50. Now, that takes your net worth down significantly.
And you still owe the bank.
And you owe the bank. And the now they kick the can down the road because they also haven't got the skills to manage the asset. And I think that's probably what you found with the four-ways is nobody really was willing to go there and throttle this thing and say, let's stop because it's going to get ugly. So that, that thing, you kick that can as far as it could go, and now you're going, okay, so we're in, and now what do we do with this thing? How do you salvage it? Small bites at a time. There's stuff that works, and make sure that it's got that ripple effect. Make that work and amplify it, and don't fix the whole mall. You fix it in pockets. And, you can shoot from the hip and say, well, let's focus on the food court only and get that right. When that's right, you can shift. Yeah. Or you could be kind of radical and say, let's knock down the whole old mall and put everyone there into the new mall, because it is a new mall. And it's got all the heights and the lights and that. In fact, but there are design elements there that are wrong. It's dark. The tiles are smooth, very highly smooth tiles. It's interesting, the shoppers, old shoppers don't like slippery tiles, Yeah, obviously. You also don't want extremely wide malls like that whole big central piazza, because if you're pushing your trolley from Starbucks to Nike, you've just done 35 meters. And so by the end of the day, you don't understand why when I go to Hyde Park, I come home, I feel quite fresh. When I go to Fourways Mall, I feel like I've run a marathon. Yeah. Why? And you don't know why. I went to that, One Forest Hills. Yes. I did an inspection there, one loop, 5Ks or 4Ks. Sheesh. So how many times you want to walk around that thing to work out what's wrong, what's right? And you could just see exactly what was happening.
And you just happened to be going to the Woolworths and
now the shoppers
exclusive books, and now it's a big
mission. So what were the shoppers doing there? They were walking through the toilet lobby, the toilet corridors, which was linking the east and west of that mall. Instead of walking around the whole mall, which one you'd want your customers to do, they're just going like, I'm not doing that. I'm walking straight through the toilet block.
Amazing.
So watching, that's another thing, if you're trying to turn around a mall, you go and spend a lot of time sitting there having coffee. Park there, have coffee there, move there. Move around, go upstairs, sit down, watch people, how they navigate, who's coming there, what does the oak look like, who's coming there, what is he wearing? What does your shopper look like?
It's like seeing those the sort of footpaths through the grass, They've done the pavement.
For sure.
But then there's where everyone walks,
And so data works, I guess, but data's not telling you the color of the tracksuit pants the dude's wearing, Or you're not really getting the smell or the look of the place. I was on a particular mall I was consulting last year. I just sat at coffee every day. So it was quite it was a very interesting thing to see. Like there's regulars that go to certain malls and they sit on these same tables. And, when you understand, when I looked at the kind of guys sitting, I thought, this is the market. This is very much the market for this mall. Now, how do we tap back into that market that has been lost?
How do we put more there for that person?
Yes, exactly. And where's your food? These guys are they're trying to get an experience of sitting where the energy of the mall is, but it's a fake energy. I said, let's take those restaurants and coffee shops and face them outwards to the parking lots because they're inside.
Yes.
So, people say, the regional, people don't like the indoor malls anymore because they want the open air. I don't think people want to shop open air if it's pissing with rain. Okay. But they do want to sit facing outside.
Yes.
When they're
always. South Africans, always.
That's how we roll.
In London, you stand on the balcony in the snow and you ride.
I thought, I was looking at a portfolio in London. I was pitching for work. So I went on their website and I wrote to the CEO. I said, I think your food offering's compromised. It should be facing outwards. And, although it's London and you think everyone wants to sit indoors, I would be prepared to take a bet. Like I'd work on risk on this one and say, let's just take the restaurants that you've got and put them outside as a test case. And then maybe we can roll it on your other 23 or whatever. It's because that market's also changing. I'm not sure, why do you want to sit in a white sterile environment looking at a for sale sign? You're looking at some guy selling underwear that's not even well displayed. It's just stack them high and sell them cheap. I want to see the
but I think it's interesting. I think you've got to hit the five senses, right? It's got to smell good in there. You walk past like a Kingsley and Heath, you're like, oh, it smells luxurious in there. Go and check it out. It can't be noisy and bouncing sound all over the walls. It's got to feel good. It's got to feel quality. You can't have the banging trolley. You've got to.
But here's the challenge for the rest of your business as well: is that those same things apply in office and industrial.
You're 100% right.
You know what I'm saying? Like I turned the office portfolio around from bringing in retail concepts, attacking the basement. Look at your basement here, dark, average. It's offensive to come in. You know, you got this dude who wants your... Imagine if I came to shop at a mall and the guy said, before I come in, I've got to give him my license. He takes a picture of my license disc, my camera, and then my... Imagine, like, how many shoppers you think you'd attract to Sandton City if you had a...
My question is, what do they do with that information?
And what do you
Where
think,
does it go?
Are you reading that book at night?
Anyone
going,
check it? Yeah.
Are you reading the book going, I think this guy's number looks wrong, you know,
Yes,
or you have no idea. So, like, there's enough tech in the world to just let a guy in. Take a photograph as he drives in, of his face, whatever. Even if he doesn't know it's been done, you know, have a camera downstairs, but let them into your building. Light up the basement. When you come to the lobby, what does it smell like? Because, you know, are the flowers fresh? But I introduced scents. Like, we had our own scent that was infiltrating the lobby, so that if a client came to any one of our buildings, there might be a chance you'd recognize the smell, like a brand.
Yes,
like
yes. Yeah.
Who were those guys in London? What was the brand that looked like Kingsley? Kingsley kind of modeled themselves.
Yeah.
They went a bit off the rails.
Yeah. I know.
They had a whole racist story. It was on Netflix. I remember watching COVID.
Yeah.
Where they used the supermodels, and you had to be a certain height and weight and have a six-pack to
I know
work
who you're
there.
talking about.
Abercrombie and Fitch.
Abercrombie and Fitch, yeah.
I mean, I don't even know if they exist anymore. So the amazing thing was there was a potent smell, potent music, and there was an energy in that. You want to create that in your lobbies. When you go to Wadeville, into your, like, and you know who's doing this? Like Rail Levitt now. You're seeing Space comes to the market with an offering that's, what is it? It's lipstick, a coat of paint, a coffee shop, and just making the place look like a place that you'd rather go to than the
next industrial park.
Derelict rust belt of whatever, Weinberg, you know. He's got pockets of... So when you tap into the senses, and I think it starts in retail, but it evolves in everything. Think about when you have guests in your house. I bet your wife's running around lighting those scented candles. You come home from work, there's no scented candles. Right? But you have guests, the scented candles are out. But I mean, you want to create a vibe. Yeah. And that's... ultimately what it all boils down to, whether it's retail, office, industrial.
You know, this building itself, old Sasol building, they did a couple of things. One of the things, used to have these, it looked like a jail. They had these, and you'll see them. The fences basically, it's quite a significant bars which kind of roll over like a hockey stick facing outward, right? It's still got it. They've just painted them black. So they've disappeared. Like they've disappeared from your vision completely. So now that's not there. Because it feels, okay, I can go in there. Yeah. The other thing they did is they knocked in a motherland downstairs. Game changer. Changed the whole thing. I got all the guys that cycle, they hang out here.
For sure.
We have coffees downstairs. The whole building just came alive. They filled it up immediately. Listen, they are in Rosebank. No, it's a very convenient node.
It's weird that you say that, because I swear I didn't notice the fence. Now, and you mentioned that, I remember that white curved fence that used to be outside, but it's black.
It's black.
But your basement, you need to fix.
Yes.
Don't you love it when you come into an office parking and then you find the only parking, and then you see somewhere stuck an A4 handwritten thing reserved for Peter, whatever, so and so, and you think like at least inform me before I've reversed in there or had an argument with the guy in front of me of whose parking it is.
I honestly think it should be like a shopping mall. You got the red and green lights. Easy.
Or just
park where you want.
Give the worst floor maybe to your staff and the best floor to your staff's customers. Because like those are, you're talking to
Riaz now. You must just Riaz. Remember, you must give the best parking to your clients, and then the worst parking to yours.
So let me tell you what will happen in a shopping mall, which you have to stop every time. Your tenants take the parkings outside their own stores.
Oh, for sure.
So like now
but isn't that just?
So it defies logic. But the guy's going, I'm the tenant, I'm the CEO or the manager of this brand. I park outside my store. Now that's he sits there 12 hours a day. That could have gone to 15 different shoppers outside that store. And it makes an impact on the people who park there. And that's why, I'm a fan of free parking, especially in convenience. Some people they're looking to extract like every last penny out of the mall. And so they want to charge for parking. But I'm going isn't that counterintuitive to charge to park here? What am I getting?
I suppose it depends on the demand on your mall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you also don't want people storing their cars there. But one way of charging, one thing that's good for charging for parking is that your tenants won't park there.
Yes.
because they're not going to pay R5 an hour to park there every day when they've got a 200 Rand or 400 Rand parking bay that's designated.
And I love the new sort of, you look at Admit or Ching or Park It or all of these things. Just reads your license plate.
100%.
Straight in. What a, I mean, that's brilliant.
So that again, it goes down to, why is it not in offices? Like, you don't have to, Kaching can work or Admit can work without a paying system.
Oh, yeah.
Just drive in and drive out, and it says, thank you for parking at whatever, what's it?
Yeah. You're 100% right.
2 Bolton or whatever, thanks for coming here and enjoy your day. Yeah. But you just got to make it experience. You know, how often I've seen like power cuts here now, you know, so you see like a guy manning the boom, and every guy's now ringing the bell, ringing the buzzer, or the parking attendant to open the boom. Like, why don't you just open the booms when there's a power cut? Let people drive in and let people drive out, instead of having all your customers getting irritated by leaving. So it's 5 sensors, it's all those things. I don't know, like you can go on
such a tangent
on all this stuff. Turning around malls, difficult. There's some guys that just get it right, and there's guys who will never get it right.
Okay, so then to sort of segue to another part of your career, you suddenly leave Investec, you're a retail developer at Investec, and you buy the Verid franchise, which was, you know, then grew quite significantly at that period of time. I remember Verid was the leading brand. And then at some point you sell Verid and you come back to Investec, and then ultimately CEO of Investec Property Fund, and you know, now back into the services arena. Tell us about the services arena. I mean, we're in the services arena. It's an interesting space. But that residential market, and how did you? I mean, I remember Verid really powering ahead as a brand. So, what do you think those keys to success of making that work, and what do you think the challenges are in that services sector?
The days at Verid, first of all, it wasn't difficult to make money in those years. The South African property market was powering ahead, 7-8% growth. The volumes. I remember we bought this business. The family was immigrating. They just had 1 year. I think 2002 was the kind of start of a momentum. But my word, 2003 to 2008 were probably the best times we've seen in years. And I don't think we're even doing those kind of volumes today. Property prices were increasing. People were extremely confident in the country. 15-20% of suburbs are churning, and you're getting good prices. You know, now you're getting. I don't think you're getting the same churn rate today, and certainly the prices are significantly depressed. Yeah.
Well, for the last 10 years, that I actually looked. I live in River Club, and the prices have stayed the same from 2014 to 2024. Flat. It's
terrible, eh? So unless you're on the Atlantic seaboard in one, you know, maybe the 2 kilometer strip, you've made a significant amount of money, and the rest is kind of. But Verid was a strong brand, but typically, like most of those agencies it was kind of the 70s generation. Family-run businesses, mom and pop, not sophisticated people. I'm not knocking them. These were people that just got into real estate. They probably started off as agents in small agencies and went on their own, and then they built big brands. There was Basil Elk, Jarwitz, Lou Geffen, who came out of his mom's business, Ada Geffen.
Oh, is it Ada?
So there was Pam Golding. They all traded under their own names, and the only real, I think, Seif, they were all, you know, they were strong family brands, but then Seif and Pam Golding took this business and they just they monopolized. They were so strong. Like they were multi-jurisdiction or multi-regional brands and franchise models. And then there was like a core of, there was Lou, Jarwitz, Verid, pretty much as the next tier. And I think that Verid had a very kind of a naive branding to it. It had a heart. I remember carrying the card when it had a heart in the name. Verid.
I remember that.
And I used to refuse to. I didn't have cards. I didn't want to hand out the card because it was so mom and pop that I thought, like, this is not cool. Jarwitz had just done a rebrand. Lou Geffen had done the Sotheby's thing, and we went on a rebranding campaign, which is actually, it's endured because that was done in 2003 or 4. Which is the red and grey that you see today.
Oh, that's the one that I know. I mean, I didn't know there was one before that.
It was so slick, and we did it, and we put a lot of effort into making it a slick brand, and I wanted to just take the mom and pop element, and I think what I'd learned at Investec in terms of just process and trying to build a culture in a business, which I see you guys do here too, actually. So, you know, build a culture in a business, a performance culture, a lot of training with the staff, dialogue training, because the agents were like notoriously just like slap. Just they wanted to sell. But they weren't there to create value, and they weren't interested in reputational risk or brand damage. And we used to do a lot of training and focus on training. And then fortuitously, we picked up a couple of good agents that kind of just bought into this new way of thinking. I mean, it was actually hit the financial mail. We attracted a lady. She passed away, Nina Obel. She was like an absolute legend. She was the doyen of Hyde Park.
Really?
And that, the firm she was working for had kind of asked her to poach. I had this young up-and-coming guy who was brilliant. He was not from the industry, and I think that's also a huge thing.
I suppose what you're doing here is effectively you're taking a lot of Investex cultures and values and putting them into a residential agency.
Trying to.
Yeah, trying to.
So you get it about 15, 20% right. It's a hard model because you have got people that are really in it often by default. It's like a real life, eh? So we were trying to build that culture in the business. And I think we were successful. But it was an industry that eventually I was getting a bit bored of. And I had an idea which has never materialized, but I actually remember going back to Investec and speaking to the late Sam Hackner. He passed away during COVID. He was our chairman of the property fund. I said, Sam, I got this idea. And he said, I don't know if we'll do it, but why don't you just come back here? So I said, what am I going to do? He said, I'm not sure what we'll do with you either, but you know the industry, you know the game, and we'll find something along the way.
That just speaks volumes for the Investec culture, is that they find the best talent and then they find the place to deploy them. They have these roles, and it's just I
think that's it. You build businesses with people, not with strategy. If you got guys who got a bit of fire in their backsides, they're going to make it happen. So anyway, I ended up going back there. It was an easy decision, and I had a much better trajectory as a second-time employee than a first-time.
Yeah, come with your eyes open.
My eyes were open. I kind of, maybe my ego was a bit dampened. Expectations were differently managed and things like that. When you're young in that place, it was kind of fiery.
Yeah. What a great place, what a great culture, and a brilliant business. Yeah. Darryl, it's been amazing to chat to you. There's just, like we're saying now, we've been talking for over an hour. We could just carry on chatting. We could do one of those guest series. We would do 6 of them, We can talk about different stuff next time, But thanks for coming to join us. It's been brilliant.
Thanks.
I think it'll come out.